Hi guys, hope all of us are doing fine. My name is Ernest and this is Ernest Sciences and Mathematics TV channel. In my discussion today, I'm going to look at the concept of horizontal asymptotes, and this is going to be under the product topic of asymptotes and asymptotic curves. Now, in our previous discussion, I had basically mentioned that we're going to have three range of asymptotes, which are going to be basically lines or curves which, however close they may come to another line, they are not going to touch. And of course, we can represent this one in terms of what we refer to as a vertical asymptote, horizontal asymptotes, and we're going to have what we refer to as skew asymptotes. And this, of course, are going to be represented in a graphical way using different illustrations. Now, in our previous video, I said that we can represent this specific aspect of a vertical asymptote by the use of this to specific, of course, access for the two Cartesian coordinate system. And now in this case, we're going to see that if we have a line or a curve that is approaching this specific axis, which is equivalent to x is equals 0, however close it may come to this one, it's not going to touch. And we can as well have a curve that is approaching this specific, of course, function, or rather we can have another one that is approaching this specific function from this specific side. Now, if we consider this one to be the left-hand side and the right-hand side of this specific, of course, axis for y, we're going to see that at this specific point, these graphs are not going to be touching this specific point, and therefore this is going to be a vertical asymptote of this specific representation. Now, in this particular discussion, we're going to look at a second category of this specific, of course, asymptotes. And we had basically, to contrast it with the first one, we are going to see that basically we have defined that for the vertical asymptotes, they are going to exist on functions which can be defined in terms of this specific nature, whereby we're going to have this f of x over g of x, where this aspect of g of x is equivalent to 0. So they're going to exist, the vertical asymptotes are going to be existing on these specific functions. And for the second case, we're going to look at, of course, at the horizontal asymptotes and try to see how they can as well be defined in this particular case. So we're going also to look at particular examples whereby we're going to have this specific Cartesian coordinate system given in terms of the representation for x and y. So we can just have that one given as such. So if we consider the case of a function which is going to be given in terms of, so let's have this one given as such. So if we have a function given in terms of y is equivalent to 3x minus 3, and then we're going to have for all over x minus 1 given as such. So we're going to see that, so this is going to be minus 2. So we're going to see that for us to define an horizontal asymptote, just like the vertical asymptotes, these asymptotes are going to exist for functions which can be defined, exist on functions given as y is equals f of x, whereby we're going to see that this specific, of course, value of x is going to tend to infinity. So in a sense, we're going to consider the positive and negative value of this specific, of course, infinity in trying to represent this specific asymptote. Now, for this specific function, then therefore, we're going to see that for us to evaluate this aspect of a limit, we're going to decompose, or rather try to write this specific function in terms of so in its specific form, this is going to be an improper fraction, and therefore we are going to write it in terms of a proper fraction by, of course, giving it its specific quotient and the, of course, a proper function in terms of a division. So we shall have this one given in terms of x minus 1. Of course, we divide with this one. So this is going to be 3 times, that is going to be giving us 3x, and this is going to be negative 3. So the difference of that one is going to be 0 plus 1. Therefore, we can write this specific representation of a value of y equivalent to 3 plus 1 all over x minus 1. And this is another form of trying to put this improper fraction in terms of a proper fraction given as such. So for us to define the asymptotes of this specific function, there is going to be an element of y, which we can give in terms of this specific representation, whereby y is equivalent to a value of 3 given as such, which is going to be given as y is equivalent to 3. So that's going to be forming an asymptote for this particular function. But there's an additional element which we are going to consider, whereby we say that this particular value of x is going to be tending to positive or negative infinity. So in a sense, we're going to consider this specific value of our x. So for the first case, we're going to have where x is going to tend to positive infinity. And therefore, that's going to imply that this specific section of the equation of 1 over x minus 1 as x tends to positive infinity can give us a specific value. So for a positive number here, we're going to have a positive fraction, which is going to be given in a particular form. So let's have this one given in terms of epsilon, positive epsilon given as such. And in case we have this particular value of x tending to negative infinity, then we're going to have this particular function of 1 over x of the equation giving us the value of a negative epsilon given as such. So for us to define the particular asymptotes for these two specific conditions, we're going to have or state for these two specific conditions, we're going to have a particular asymptote for y given in terms of 3 plus epsilon given as such. And for the second case, we're going to have 3 minus epsilon given as such. So these are going to be defining the two conditions that we're going to have for positive epsilon and negative epsilon, considering this specific section of the equation of the value of y given as such. So this is going to be a way in which we can define such a kind of an equation in terms of an horizontal asymptote, which is going to be given as such. So kindly check our description boxes for various links of other videos. Engage us in the comment section, subscribe, and also ring that notification bell for various updates on different topics we do in math and sciences. So that is it for now, guys. Bye, God bless you. Catch us in our next video.